In today's episode, I'm chatting with a dancer and choreographer that has shared the stage with me for decades. We are discussing how you can embrace imperfections as a dancer, plus the do's and don'ts of the dance world. Get your notebooks out. You're going to want to take notes for this one. Ciao, I'm Anna Harsh, professional dancer, author, and host of The Dance Floor, a podcast that explores the power of dance in our lives through personal stories and interviews with experts. Each episode shares life lessons and advice through the art of dance. Learn how dance inspires confidence, fosters connection, and ways to improve your skills. Whether you are a seasoned dancer or brand new to the art, you'll find something that motivates you in this podcast. So grab your dance shoes and join me on The Dance Floor. Hello and welcome back, listeners. I'm here with Mr. Geoff Steele, dancer, choreographer, and longtime friend. Geoff, welcome back to The Dance Floor.
Thanks for having me. It's an honor.
Listen, we are going to dive into one of my 5 pillars of dance. So, during this season of The Dance Floor, we've been talking about the 5 pillars of dance, which are adaptability, discipline and dedication, collaboration and communication, embracing imperfection, and presence and mindfulness. So I thought we would dive into embracing imperfection because as dancers, we know we all make mistakes, but how we deal with that is kind of challenging sometimes.
It can be. I think it goes along maybe with mindfulness and really realizing what is the imperfection. Because I think that there's also a a beauty in being imperfect. Because I
Yeah.
think some of the most brilliant and beautiful things that I have seen through dance actually came from an imperfection. Somebody may have made a mistake during choreography, but as I'm watching, I'm like, oh my gosh, let me rethink this for a minute. That wasn't the move, but there was something about that that caught my eye that I did really like.
Yeah. I mean, how many times have we choreographed something and stopped and went, oh, wait, that wasn't right. But then we're like, oh, you know what? That felt better to do that movement after this one. So
Yeah,
sometimes finding the beauty in the imperfection, I think, is part of the process as dancers. And to embrace that, I think you'll achieve your goals faster and learn from
absolutely.
your mistakes.
Absolutely. And I think that that is really a really nice way to start looking at it because so many times through lifetime of dance, if you did something improperly, you were reprimanded in some sort of way.
Right.
And, can be so stiff and structured sometimes that there are things, that when it comes to technique, of course, you're going to point out, look, that wasn't technically what I'm looking for. But once you sort of open the door and you're looking at things more through a broader scope of what is the story that we're trying to tell, what is the message that's being delivered, like you said, I know when I do choreography, I'll always watch myself back. Even when you're watching yourself in the mirror, you're watching arm placement, turnout, not necessarily
The story behind it or the movement.
right. And choreographing yourself is different when you put it on a group. And
Yes.
so there's been pieces that I've been happy with solo wise, but then putting it on a group, you just have to rework some of it. And you start getting, oh, well, if this is happening here, then maybe this is a contrasting moment here. What translates on one body when you add it to maybe six, it translates differently.
Yeah. You're right, working solo performances on yourself. Sometimes I'm way harder, of course, on yourself than you are on a group or putting it on another person with choreography. So you're right. You're looking at yourself in the mirror going, gosh, I need this better. You're working on technique sometimes. And
Mhm.
sometimes I think as we grow in our career, we have to look past the technique and see what is the story that we need to tell. What is the message behind the choreography or the movement? And that becomes the focus. So seeing those imperfections, I think, can stop a dancer from growing.
I think that it's one of those things that is so heavily disciplined.
Yeah.
Like, there's been so many times throughout my dance career where had harsh critiques over doing something wrong. Like, I've just felt broken
Yeah.
and, and didn't want to
Didn't want to
come
try again.
Yes, I didn't want to try it again until you take that moment of mindfulness and you reflect on it and you sort of go to that place of, okay, I'm not going to present this move again until I've taken those corrections, I've
Right.
perfected it and present it without getting a harsh negative comment.
As a dancer, you have to do something more than once or twice to get it perfected. Obviously, you're not going to be able to drive through, buy the item, the most beautiful batma or the beautiful deep plie. It's just not going to come like that. You have to work at it and be consistent. But you're right. Over the years, you and I both have experienced that harsh criticism that kind of stopped us in our tracks. Well, maybe I don't want to tap dance again, or maybe I don't want to do this jazz class anymore. I'm not getting that double pirouette. I think once you grow through that, I finally had a teacher, maybe in college, I would say, that would break down the mistakes and go, well, here, right before you plie or right before you did that jump, this is where you're making your correction that you need to fix. And so when I saw that, oh, he or she can pinpoint where I can improve, then that made a big difference to me. Like, thank you for showing where I was getting stuck and where the mistake is happening. And I think as a teacher, we both have understood that moment for a student because we've experienced it. And now we're better teachers because we can say, ooh, right before you do this, breathe, take that breath, your leg will go higher, or use that plie for that jump. And
Yes.
I think that helps us get past the imperfection, and embrace it a little bit like, oh, now I've learned how to fix it for myself. Now I can be a better teacher to fix it for others.
Yes. And I think what a blessing that we have had those teachers in our lives who have been caring enough to let us know, hey, here's why you're not being able to do it. Not just a harsh critique or harsh
Right.
feedback on it, but just a simple, maybe try this, or your plie isn't deep enough, so you're not getting the releve where it needs to be. And with all body shapes and sizes, you really have to take into account because I'm tall, I'm 6'4". So I have to understand and fit it to my body
Right.
exactly how my body is going to get me into
Oh,
the area where I need to be, and just those little pieces of information, of knowledge, it shifts the entire perspective from you're doing it wrong to let me help correct what I'm seeing is not looking comfortable on you.
right. And you're right. I'm not 6'4" by any means. I am only 5 foot. So you and I have great different perspectives that we can give feedback to dancers from different points of view,
Yeah.
and even when I've had a male teacher or a female teacher, they also have different perspectives and give you different feedback, which I'm grateful for because it really makes you a well rounded dancer. But you're right, those imperfections, when I finally learned that you can pinpoint the why, and it could be something simple, like maybe you just misunderstood something,
Mhm.
or, you saw it differently, or you weren't hearing all the sounds in a tap class. It could be really simplistic, or maybe you needed to shift your weight differently. It could be a small imperfection that makes a big difference. And once you know the why, wow, that really is a mind shift difference. And then you think, oh, well, I can improve greatly if I just take this slowly. Maybe it's about breaking down the concepts or breaking down the 8 counts that you're having trouble with. And I think a lot of dancers maybe out there just want to fly through things, and get to that bigger picture or bigger moment, a bigger trick.
Yeah.
but we need to all step back and go over our basics and go over our routines little by little, 8 by 8. You and I have broken down lots of combinations, 8 counts at a time. And it can be painful, but you know what? It really helped you and I for sure.
Well, absolutely. And I will say, when you're going to workshops and things like that, you're learning throughout a weekend, maybe 30 different routines.
Right.
You're learning them by the hour. So you have an hour slot and you're learning this routine in that hour. And then you're going maybe into the next hall or class, which could be a completely different style of dance, a different genre. And so during those time periods, what I try to do, take in as much as I possibly can, because I know that there is no way that my brain is going to retain 30 different routines coming out of this. But what I can take from each one of them and the things that I really like and really feel comfortable in my body doing, and then go back and review footage, go back and review the video and be like, oh, okay, I can see now. But when you're in that moment of attending 30 different classes in a weekend, I wish somebody would have told me back then as I was growing up not to sweat so much on each class and then carry that burden of that class you took before into the next class, into the next class, into the next class, because you really need to take a moment after each class or each session that you're attending and sort of allow your body just to process what you've learned, allow time for your mind to shift into a new dance form, into a new, back to the blank slate of, okay, I'm going into a new instructor, I'm going into a new style, I'm going into a completely new room. The surroundings are different. It's a lot to get overwhelmed in those kinds of situations. So just to take a breath and clear everything, because I've gone to weekend workshops, and this was more as I was growing up. I wouldn't be able to get something in the first workshop, and I would carry that with me that entire weekend, that I was unable to get one move in the first class.
Yeah.
And so it deterred me
From the rest
from
of the weekend.
for the rest of the weekend.
Yeah. And that
And
can happen.
so, yeah,
And that can happen. So, advice dancers, don't take every little thing with a grain of salt, right? We can't carry that weight into the next class. Sometimes that's really hard to do, but you're right. If you take a few breaths, take a moment, maybe take some notes, use a notebook and write some things down. Why was it frustrating? How can you improve and move past it? And go to the next class with a fresh, clean pair of eyes and ears to absorb everything and try something new. And I know if I'm trying a new style, it can be frustrating because you feel like you're just making mistake after mistake as soon as you start the new style. Try to take a little bit of grace with yourself and move forward knowing that you're learning and you're progressing each time you're trying. And that's part of it. Did you know Allegro Dance Company offers various classes online from dance to fitness? Yes, now you can enjoy a relaxing yoga class or book a tarantella class for your entire family. You don't have to leave your home anymore to enjoy these great and unique classes. So what are you waiting for? There's no more excuses. You can work at your pace. Book your class. Choose your time. Visit our website today, allegrodancecompany.net, and let your dance journey begin.
I think that there's also the classes too that may come a little easier to you. And so you fly through them, or you know, this seems very easy to me. This may be something that I'm more comfortable with. But instead of being present and mindful in that moment, dancing it full out, you're still holding on to that four counts from that first. So instead of having fun with
Yeah.
something that you know and something that's coming easy and dancing it full out and really, really just enjoying it, you're still holding on to that. So definitely, like you said, taking some notes just real quick, shaking some things off, just a quick shake of readjusting my body, readjusting my mind. I'm going into this class now with my full intention on coming in, enjoying what I'm learning, dancing it full out. It really makes a difference. The mindset makes the difference.
And I think that some dancers will not take a class that might be challenging because maybe they did in the past, and those imperfections, like you say, just grate on them. And they're like, you know what? I'd rather be in a class that I just fly through and it's easy for me. But we can't be that as dancers. We got to keep pushing and trying something new. Otherwise, your vocabulary of movement will never grow. You'll never extend your repertoire into something that can be really fantastic and that you can pull from later as a choreographer if that's what you want to go into. And you and I have pulled from lots of different pockets as choreographers, different styles. And that really has made our choreography so interesting and storytelling to watch. And we've won countless awards, but sometimes that doesn't matter if you are still thinking about all the times that you messed up. You have to let it go. Geoff, can you give the listeners a little bit of background? I know you've been on the podcast before, but you've danced with me for years and years and decades. Give us a little background of where you studied a little bit and different styles that you've tapped into over the years.
So I started when I was 6, and I started with clogging. It's Appalachian kind of folk dance. And I'm from West Virginia, so it's just sort of a melting pot of percussive stomp. It incorporated tap, it incorporated Canadian influences, African influences, and then as I grew up and it got me into my ballet, my tap, my jazz, my ballroom, my modern. Modern was such an eye opener for me to be able to start stepping outside of some boxes. Then I went to college on a dance scholarship in North Carolina, where we were invited all over the world to perform, won 28 national championships while I was there. We were invited to perform at the 25th anniversary of the Kennedy Center. But those days were so grueling. And I think we all can relate to this if you have studied dance in college, because you're taking classes during the day in all different kinds of subjects. You have all of your core classes, and then if you're on a dance team or a dance performance ensemble or anything of that nature, then you have extra practices on top of that. And
Right.
then if you're competitive, you have competitions on the weekend.
Yeah, of
Your
course.
schedule is completely packed. You wake up at 6 in the morning to go to rehearsal.
Right.
Then your classes start at 8. They end at 4. You have maybe a hour and a half if you're lucky. I was a Bonner Scholar, and because I was into community service, we had to do 8 hours of community service a week. So usually my day consisted of 6 in the morning rehearsal, 8 to 4 classes, 4 to 6 community service, 6 to 6:15 grab a banana and run from the
Right.
cafeteria,
Yeah.
because you're back in rehearsal from 6 to 9, maybe even later.
Yeah.
Then you have to go home, do your homework for your classes for the next day, do your studying, and then repeat it all the next
Yeah.
day.
And I think with those kinds of schedules, I can relate to that. I mean, my college schedule was pretty much what you were describing. And sometimes we traveled. during our college days, to perform somewhere else. And so there's a traveling schedule. So you don't have time for imperfections. Like you
No,
feel that way. You have a lot of pressure on yourself to be perfect as a dancer, but also as a student. You want to keep your grades up and you want to have all these things together and look professional and do all of these things. So it can be a real toll on the body, on the mind, on your spirit, and on your relationships, with others and with your friends. And it can be a lot. So heed our warnings and think about writing down those notes and taking a little bit of a break, perhaps. Sometimes I think you and I could have both used an extra 15 minutes here and there just to breathe. And
where
anywhere we could have gathered that just to go over something and maybe, like you said, shake some things off, physically shake your hands, shake your head, shake your legs, and just let everything go, because that can be stored in the body constantly and you're constantly thinking about it and you're trying to be the most perfect person. But as dancers, we know we're humans, we're not machines. We can't just pump out the same thing twice. Sometimes it doesn't always happen. So let go of perfections, that idea of being perfected,
yeah.
and embrace the change, embrace changes and challenges and doing things that are wrong, because sometimes you find the right path on the wrong road. And you and I both have explored all of those roads, I think, throughout our career.
So many things.
Yeah, so many roads. So, Geoff, what do you think you want to say to the next generation, that's listening and maybe is taking notes like, oh, yeah, that's a good idea of how we can embrace imperfections and move forward in our careers? Mine is just to be mindful and maybe find that time for meditation every day.
Definitely. Definitely, meditation completely changed my life. Being mindful and just sort of silencing the outside world because there's so much noise and static going on out there that we take on that we don't even know we take on.
Right.
Especially today with social media, there's so many things that number one are getting said, number two show up in your feed, but they don't feed your soul.
Right.
So we take on a lot of things that we don't realize we're taking on. Really being mindful and actually limiting the amount of time you are on social media
Oh my
or
God, Amy.
limiting the amount of time that you're lending to things that don't really feed you.
Yeah. I think that's the thing that I've learned as an adult now is what you eat, what you absorb, all of those things that you're taking in. I kind of limit, watch the kind of diet that you have, but not just with food, but with everything, the kind of programming that you're watching, the kind of people that you're talking to. If they're not supporting you or challenging you in good ways to be better or more proficient or just more organized, maybe they're not supposed to be in your circle of friends or your circle of community.
And it's completely fine to know your boundaries and
Yeah.
set boundaries
Yeah.
because a lot of us don't. And so a lot of us take on issues that are not ours to take on. And what that does is it drains us of the energy that we really want to be putting into something that does nourish us, something that does feed us. It's okay to set boundaries and it's okay to be that person that if this is a reoccurring issue with someone, set that boundary before it gets to be a problem. If they're your true friend, they will either understand or they will remove themselves.
I couldn't have said it better. Yeah, you have to know who is with you in your corner and who is not. And I think sometimes the arts get very competitive, right? We know we see them at competitions, but the only person that you're really competing with, honestly, is yourself. You just
Yep.
want to make yourself better. The other tip that I would give younger dancers is clear out your space. You and I chatted about this a few episodes ago about creating space and clearing a space, having a clean dance bag, an organized dance bag, or maybe if you have a space at home, maybe it's just your room that you practice in, clear it out. make sure it's organized. Make sure that you have your calendar, up to date and you are organized. And that really does go a long way.
If you declutter, then you're becoming more focused.
Yeah.
So I would go to open my dance bag and I'm just already frustrated because I'm digging for my shoes, I'm digging for this prop, I'm digging for a new pair of socks, whatever. I'm already starting off on a bad note. I've already cluttered myself for being present and mindful in the space that I'm in.
Right.
Whereas you take that time to declutter, organize, then when you go to the show, when you go to your class, you open your bag and everything is in order. It's easy to find. And it's not just decluttering your bag, it's decluttering your mind,
Yeah. And that sets you up
decluttering your
for a better session. You're going to feel
absolutely.
like that you won't make mistakes or that less mistakes might be happening because you're not so frustrated, right? So, yeah,
Yes.
declutter. I mean, it's 2025. Get rid of it. Have you used it in the last year? Throw it away. Maybe give it away. Donate
Yeah.
it. Jeff, before we wrap up, just some do's and don'ts. I know you and I talk about this all the time of when people want to hire us to perform or hire a dance company or dancers, some do's and don'ts. And I know we've highlighted this before, but I think it needs maybe a refresher. I know the one that I always give is do your research on that company or dancer. Go to their website and read. I mean, really read their website and understand all of their contracts and everything that they offer and who they are and what they offer. Because I think once we get those phone calls, you and I have both experienced, they ask the same questions that could have been answered on our websites.
I think that coming from both sides of this, when I'm hosting an event, these are things that I look up. If I'm going to hire a performer, I want to know about them, like not just what they send me. I really, only because I've been burnt before. So everybody should kind of have a press packet, with pertinent stories or newspaper articles that you've been mentioned in, good reviews that you've gotten off of social media.
I mean, and then there's the basics like headshot, resume, bio, a
Right.
video sample of your show.
Yes. And that's wonderful because that gives me a starting point.
Exactly.
And I like to have a starting point. And unfortunately, you have to, in this day and age, you have to kind of do your research and look into who you're hiring.
Yeah.
Because number one, you're paying for something. You want to make sure you're paying for quality. So look into the quality of the show. Look into the quality of the performer. Look into where they studied, what they've done. Have they done continued education?
Right.
Have they taught more classes? Are they still learning? Are they still relevant? Are they still getting out there, embracing community? Are they still what their press package is, or has their press package expired and they're still using it? Because we constantly continue to grow as performers. We
Right.
constantly continue to grow. And so this is another good tip is to make sure that your press packet is always updated with the
Yeah.
most current information about you. Every time that you receive a good review, every time that you receive good feedback, include that in because the last thing that I want to do when I'm hosting an event and I'm hiring somebody is get a press packet from 10 years ago. And then once I do my research, realize, oh, well, since 10 years ago, nothing has changed.
Right. And you want to be able to hire somebody that has evolved and that is getting out there and maybe expanding their repertoire or growing their show. I know every year I always try to make Allegro slightly different, a little bit refreshed, because I'm always researching and learning something new. So I think, at least I hope, it shows during our showcases. And now that I have over 32 years of the company, I can visually see in the videos from when we started to present day, like how we have grown, what we know now and how much better it looks. But you got to start somewhere too. Don't Sometimes I was in that dwelling of the imperfection. Look how we used to look. Oh my. You have to see how much I've grown, look at the growth and the expansion that, like you said, what have you done for the community? That's another thing that dancers, if you're listening, I know, like you said, it's kind of hard to find that time, but when you can, give something back to the community and let your name be known for community work or collaboration. And I talked about that with another guest. That communication and collaboration leads to community, doesn't it? And you and I know that more than anybody else.
Every time that I am writing community or I spell community, I capitalize the UNITY, unity. And I think that this was probably an entire different podcast, but the dance community, make sure that you surround yourself because for a lot of us, the dance community can be a very toxic place to be in.
Yeah.
So make sure that your dance community is strong, focused, are there for you when you fall, who are not the ones who are pointing out your imperfections,
Yeah.
but are the ones who are, hey, you'll get it next time. Try this. Because just the dance community in itself, we tear each other apart so much that sometimes we become our own worst critic. We're all out there trying to hopefully educate, hopefully put our best foot forward, entertain, hopefully develop a sense that we're not just putting on a show, but we're giving you a gift that we
Yeah.
were given.
Yeah.
And
I
we're
mean, that's the
passing.
whole point of dance. At least I hope.
We invite you to come join us. Come try it. Have some fun with us. I really do think that, that that's one of the things that the dance community needs to work on is being the people who are supporting each other.
Yeah.
Because if not us, who?
Right. I
I
mean, we
mean,
know each other the best. We know what it's like to be in this, and nobody else is wearing our shoes but us. So it's easy for us to tear people down. That's so easy, right? But to
yes.
build each other up and finding each other when we are, making those mistakes and feeling all of those imperfections. You want that community to say, let me help you grow. Let me
Yeah.
help you make better choices and better decisions so that you can get it the next time. And you will.
Yeah. And I think that this is like that important part of that critique that we were talking about at the very beginning, how one little negative thing said can deter an entire either show, a performance. It can make you not want to continue. If it's said at the wrong moment, it's just really devastating. People out there who have been doing this for so long that they know the timing and the place to give a little feedback. It
Right.
doesn't mean that they're critiquing or that they're saying you did something wrong. If somebody simply says, I saw the look on your face when you did this. One thing that I've personally learned while doing this move that helps me is this. And to be able to take that as a thank you
Yeah.
instead,
Thanks for helping. Right.
right, instead of a how dare you.
How we take feedback and critique, it's a mindset. As students, when a teacher sees you and gives you feedback and critique, sometimes that's a real blessing because that means A, they saw you and they're noticing you and they're seeing that you're growing and they want you to achieve that next level. So maybe that's why they gave you the correction. But you're right. We've also had those people that just wanted to critique just to tear you down. You have to find the easy balance and find which one's which. And I think that comes with experience.
Yeah. And I will say this, it is never a good idea to critique somebody before a show,
Oh God,
after
no.
a show. Like you're so busy dealing with what you're arriving to because a lot of times we don't know what we're going to get until we show up. And so now you're fitting your show onto a new stage or onto a new performance area. And I guarantee some things are not going to be perfect or
Right. As
because
you planned. No, it's
it's a
never.
whole new space that you're in. And
Yeah.
you can practice and rehearse and rehearse and rehearse.
Yeah.
But until you get to the actual place of performance and find what you're dancing on, what the surroundings are, what the sound is like, if there's lighting,
If we're helping a community put on a show or put on a festival or an event, we're the best people to say, hey, this is our do's and don'ts.
yeah,
This is our shoulda and our coulda and our wouldas, right?
right,
But yeah, you never want to approach performers before or after a show with any kind of negative feedback. That is not the time to give it.
no,
After the show is over with and you've had time to digest it, trust me, most of the time the dancers already know what they did wrong or what they could have fixed. And trust me, they will fix it before they come back to that venue or space. And
yeah,
sometimes it's out of our control. Like we weren't given enough space or enough time to adjust our spacing. Sometimes we just need a few minutes. Usually, for my group, it's just a few minutes. As you know, you've danced with us. We just need 5 or 6 minutes to kind of eyeball the space, go over some places where it might be a problem and adjust it, before we start. But sometimes you can't and you have to adapt on the spot. And we talked about that in another episode. But
yeah.
those are good
This
do's
is
and don'ts.
good for the people planning events.
Yeah.
Do provide a safe stage to dance on, accurate space for the performance that you hire, good quality sound. Do provide good microphones so that the dancers don't have to deal with all of that and can just show up and show out and put their best foot forward and create the experience that they've been practicing to create and to give rather than having to deal with watch this part in the stage because there's a giant puddle on it. Watch this part in the stage because it's uneven. Watch that speaker because it really is intrusive to our spacing.
And these are
And
all real things that we have come across. Like you and I have experienced everything you said. I even was on a stage where it didn't have steps to get onto the stage. They put milk crates to
Mhm.
create steps to get onto the stage, which was not safe whatsoever. One of my partners lifted me, literally picked me up and put me on the stage because I wasn't able to walk them up the steps, quote unquote, in my costume. It just wasn't allowing me to do that. So there's just so many factors, safety factors, and even financial factors. Don't ask. We don't want to ask for our check at the end of a show. Go ahead and gracefully say thank you and give the dancers their check and hand it to them inside of an envelope. So it's a little secure and private. No one else needs to know how much we were paid or how much the dancers are getting paid. That kind of privacy is also important. And one thing that you and I have run across recently is when people call us, and if we can't do the gig, they ask, well, do you know someone else, another company? And that's really challenging to answer. I can't speak for another company. I don't know their skills and I don't know that they're proficient enough to show up in quality. I can't do a quality insured with that other company.
That is never okay. In any situation, that is never okay. When you're hiring talent, you don't ask, is there a cheaper version of you?
Right.
That
It's
makes no
insulting.
sense. It is a very insulting. And if you want the cheaper version, do your research.
Yeah. Goes back to number one.
Research the cheaper version because I don't do the research on cheap versions of myself. Why would I?
Right. All we know is us. We don't know. We don't research others that could take our places. We both do really niche things that not a lot of people do. So I'm not sure we can be replaced. And that's part of the greatness of it.
And sometimes I just want to respond. I know a company that charges more for less. They charge more
For doing less.
for an inadequate performance.
Yeah, you can't be the
If
person
that's
that
what,
assures that quality.
yeah. And that I think goes back though into the event people actually doing your research.
Right.
If you want quality, make sure that you can afford it, but also, like I just said, make sure that what you're paying for is quality.
You're right.
I
Geoff, there's
mean,
so many do's and don'ts that we have all experienced. And so I hope everybody's taking notes. We've given you so much to think about and chat about. And I appreciate Geoff's time here today to share his wisdom. And I know he'll be back as a guest in my next season to talk more about how the do's and don'ts of dance world, because we have experienced it all. Thanks everyone for listening today. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Hit that 5 stars. I'm your host, Anna Harsh, and until next time, keep moving on the dance floor.